So again, thanks everyone for joining us on the Community Conversations webinar. We're going to have an update on the title funding and talk about some innovative ideas for leveraging those funds in the spring and the summer and next year. I'm happy to have a host of people with us. Some are not, some are, but I will tell you who's here now, and some might be coming in a little bit. Ashley Frame, hello, how are you? Thank you.
I'm doing fine. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you great. Thanks.
Great.
And so Ashley Frame is with us, and Joey Nickel is with us. You can see working our way to the right. Hi, Joey.
Hi.
Hi. And Stan may or may not be showing up in a bit. I think he's in another meeting. And Catherine Adams as well is currently in another meeting, but she might join us as well. So there's your powerful New Hampshire Department of Ed title team. And I'm here, Karen Mazzo, and Mike is with us, and Anne is with us as well. So we're happy to have you for the webinar today. Before we go any further, we do want to thank the Department of Ed for helping us with a lot of our webinars, all of our webinars in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And we're grateful to them for supporting the webinars that we've been offering. And we want to thank everybody who's on right now, because the work has been hard and relentless, and people have just been showing an incredible amount of commitment. So thank you to all of the leaders that are on right now. And just some logistics, you're all muted at the moment. And if you want to ask a question, you can ask a question in the questions pane in your navigation pane. There's a drop down and you can write your questions in there, and we will monitor the questions and ask them as we move through the webinar. And the other thing you can do is you can raise your hand during the webinar, and we might unmute you depending on the timing. At the end, you'll definitely have some time to talk, and we can unmute you then if you want to ask a direct question and have a dialogue, more of a dialogue. I want to point you just to the New Hampshire Learns Remotely site on NHDOE. There's a lot of great information on this site. All of the webinars that are being offered are listed there. There's lots of memos from the commissioner, certainly. There's remote learning information. There's just tons of resources that you need right now currently. So I would encourage everyone to go there. And at the bottom of the visual of that picture, I'm just sharing with you 2 sites where there are 2 other recorded webinars around funding and changes to funding as a result of COVID. So the CCSO had a webinar, and also Edmentum put out a webinar around the CARES Act and some of the changes. So I thought you would be interested in that. And today we're going to talk about changes in funding as a result of COVID and the ESSA waivers. And after that, we're going to talk about some brainstorms, creative ways to support kids and to use your funds in new ways in response to current needs. And then we'll open it up for questions and discussion. And yeah, we're looking forward to it. Mike, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Nope, I think that's good. I think at the end, Karen, we'll give a little brief update on some of the additional webinars we're doing going forward. Is that right? At
Yes,
the end?
yes,
Okay,
definitely, at the end.
So let's jump right into it.
So welcome everybody, and Ashley, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Great, thank you so much. So great. Not sure exactly who's in the room, but hello. I think I probably know at least a handful of you, if not more. But my name is Ashley Frame, work at the Department of Education, and right now I am the administrator for the ESSA or ESEA. They're iteration of the ESEA Act. Those title funds, and so this new CARES Act has impacted our program significantly. I'm sorry, you can probably hear my dog, who sometimes makes a bit of noise. This is the reality that I'm sure we're all living to a certain extent right now. I do hope she will stop in just a moment. So basically, we've got a bunch of things on our plate right now. The CARES Act itself provides a bunch of money to school districts. And that's the kind of the first thing that I want to talk about. I think of this in chunks. And one of the first things that I think it's important to get out there is that the CARES Act does provide additional funds. And the note at the bottom of this screen is that you can expect the amount, about 85% of the amount that you normally get for Title I. That's at a district level. Now, the funds are not Title I funds, but the formula to figure them out essentially is Title I. But that doesn't mean that it's only Title I allowable activities. In fact, as you can see, the bulk of this slide tells you essentially what a district can do with these funds. So they can fund any other federal title grant program or IDEA, Perkins, McKinney-Vento, homeless assistance there, adult ed, CTE centers, basically any of those other programs that you might be used to seeing in your community or in your school, such as Title I, Title II, Title III funds, any of those. Additionally, there are also a bunch of activities specifically authorized and designed to support your community in the time of the COVID-19 crisis. So emergency response coordination, supporting school leaders, that's specifically authorized, ensuring preparedness and coordination. You can see educational technology in here, cleaning supplies, mental health supports, and you can see that as anything with student wellness, anything for summer learning. So there's a lot in this grant. And again, that's separate funds from what you normally would receive. So that's kind of interesting, I think. And that pretty much covers that slide. That money is not yet out, but the state has done all that it can to get those funds. And we did receive a grant award notification letter, which means that fairly rapidly now, in the next couple of weeks, you should see those funds if you work in the grants management system, sort of pop up in your grants management system. I do not have an exact date for you on that. So with this new CARES Act, it also provided states an opportunity to apply for waivers. And waivers, as you know, kind of get you out of something. They're like a get out of jail free card to a certain extent. And so the state did apply for 2 waivers. And the first waiver that we did is not on this slide, but I want to mention the first waiver is an assessment waiver. And it essentially allowed our state to say we are not going to engage in the standard state-required assessments at the end of this school year, or now. So that means the New Hampshire SAS, that means SAT, and that means the DLM. So that was the first part of the waiver. Sort of in exchange, or as a part of that waiver, it required the state to also freeze the status or hold the status of all of its CSI schools. So those are staying the same through next year because the data, of course, that might release them from that program or status of that program would not be available. So it's kind of the logical, I guess, the logical other side of that coin. So that was the first waiver. Now, kind of onto the slide. The second waiver that we applied for was a flexibility waiver with the current spending of LEAs. And this does get a little technical. There are some questions about how this is going to work. We have a plan about how it's going to be operationalized, but this is basically how it is going to play out. So again, we're going to have some more detail coming out to all districts in a bit about how this is going to look in the grants management system, but effectively, the first big thing is that Title I funds, and those of you who work with Title I funds, you know that they typically last for only a year. And then districts are allowed a certain percentage of carryover should they need it, which means they can carry over, it's usually 15%, but sometimes it's zero. So between 0 and 15%, they can carry over into the next year. So this waiver allows the state and all the districts, since it's on behalf of you, to carry over an unlimited amount of funds from the 1920 grant to the 2021 grant. That effectively extends the lifespan of your money, so enabling you to spend your money until later. So that's Title I. In another world, the second bullet point, 1819 grant funds for several other programs, Title II, Title IV, Title III. These grants generally live in the grants management system, and you might have a couple grants going on at once. That's kind of how those grants work. And all those 1819 funds are going to live longer, so until September 30th of 2021. So effectively, now all of your grants last until September 30th, 2021, though they won't necessarily look like that in the grants management system. Your money will live that long. So this is something I've sort of not learned, but clarified in the way that I'm putting this or expressing this between the last presentation. All you folks that demonstrated success are probably hearing a little bit of a difference in the way I'm saying it, because it created a lot of confusion the way I was saying it. So there's some timeline that's freed up. We'll talk about that a little bit more, and I'm happy to answer questions on that one. I'm sure everyone's going to have the same questions, so I'm happy to clarify too on behalf of one person, if they ask that question, I can kind of hopefully get a few birds with one stone on that one. So a couple of the other flexibilities, aside from the length of time that you have to spend your grant funds, the waiver released, or yes, I guess it's already in place. So it released you from some of the, not administrative burdens, but some of the pieces or provisos of other grants. Notably, the Title IV grant, which carries with it the requirement of a needs assessment, and that requirement has been lifted. So the school districts will not need to adjust their needs assessment for the 1920 grant in light of all the COVID response, because I think everyone would probably say in a needs assessment, we need these things because of this crisis. So, so that's another one of the freedoms. It's a little bit of a fine grain, but it's still very significant. And you can move the slide here.
Actually, there was a question about whether IDA and
Sure.
Perkins will also have the same extensions in their
No. As far as we know, no. Just the ESSA title programs have an extension, but that's a great question. But as far as I know, not yet. I mean, unless something brand new comes out. Okay. But that's a great question. I think that's a logical question. I'm not sure why if they're not included, but all right. In this one, on this next slide, so thank you. LEAs can spend in several of their grants, right, the 1819 funds, on or 1920 funds on Title IV activities, and those activities, though they must be allowable within the current grant structure, the writing of the grant, they don't have to, they're freed from a 20% bottom or a 20%, you need at least 20% in this category and at least 20% in this category. So freed from those percentages. That proviso only applied to school districts that got $30,000 or more on that grant. Now, technology infrastructure, this also relates to Title IV, and this is for awards of any size, not just not just 30,000 or more. That was a separate category for Title IV grants, are freed from a cap on technology infrastructure spending within the effective use of technology category. So this, I know it's all a little bit zooey, but the way these grants work, they all have little little hitches and little hooks. And this hook is now gone. And that was a huge burden for many people. Anytime they wanted effective use of technology as an activity, they could only spend 15% of that money on infrastructure, which the feds defined as software, hardware, devices. I mean, not even just what you might think like servers, it was anything. So that's a great relief, which frees up districts to purchase really, really desperately needed technology devices and supplies. Another proviso, Title II, this one is a little bit less, it's a little bit, I think, neater in that you can do one-shot PD workshops, whereas before, districts had to prove that whatever they were engaging in for professional learning, it was sustained, it was job embedded and ongoing, and this waiver releases us from that.
Okay.
If you guys can still hear my dog Ruth, who's still occasionally barking at squirrels, yeah, her name is Ruth, and she's a sweetheart, but today she's been nudgy. That's the word I'm going to use. I don't know if she can sense something. I don't know. Maybe we're going to have a thunderstorm or something. She's been nudgy. Okay.
Ashley, wait, I have a one quick question.
Sure.
On Friday, it was mentioned that CARES Act funding was using the Title II funding formula. Is
Title
that
I,
clarify that?
Yes, it's basically the Title I. You are going to get about 85% in terms of amount, right? 85% of what you normally would get for Title I. That's at a district level. Now, I know Title I is often delivered to individual schools. This money is not, even though about the same calculation is used to allocate to districts.
Mm-hmm.
The district is not obligated to define funds per school as they are normally in Title I. So it's kind of Title I very light, if that makes sense. So you have to find out about your district allocation. We usually get, just to put it at a statewide level, we usually get about, I don't know, $44 million in Title I, and we're getting 37 in the CARES Act for school districts. So, you know, it's almost the same amount of money, but less, a little less.
So
Thank
Ashley,
you.
just
Okay,
to make sure
sorry.
the question was answered, I'm sorry, just to make sure the question was answered. So the amount is based on, well, you're relating to Title I funds, but in terms
Yep.
of determining the funding formula for how much each district gets, is that based on Title II funding formula or Title I funding formula or
No,
some
Title
other
I,
formula?
Title I.
Okay.
Now, here's where I think someone is maybe thinking, if I'm hearing this question correctly, or maybe I'm buying trouble, but private schools, this is where Title II comes into play here. Because it's all Title I, essentially the same formula. It's based on poverty and population, right? So that's the Title I formula in a nutshell. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's where the CARES Act money is following that same pattern. Title II, where we're hearing Title II and where that's coming into play, is the formula for figuring out what each private school is entitled to participate in, right? In other words, money's the proxy, but how private schools participate is based on the way it's done in Title II. I hope I didn't buy trouble with that, but I'm just thinking that might be what, where we're hearing Title II.
I think that was clarifying. Thanks.
Okay. And we do have some guidance coming out for the CARES Act from our private school office that's sort of taking on some of that role, and they've developed a whole really nice piece of guidance on that one. I think it's not quite ready for the press yet. In fact, I don't even know if Joey has seen it. Probably not, because I think I just got it a couple hours ago from the private school office upstairs. So we will be sharing that out as we can, because I know that's kind of a confusion.
I have a question here. Will we be giving a portion of the CARES funds to our private schools?
Yes, but not that directly. So private schools, essentially because they don't have a publicly held school board, can never hold the public funds. In other words, they can't actually be given money directly. However, the LEA is obligated to pay. The LEA is obligated to pay up to a certain amount for services and other resources for the private schools, but the LEA retains control of the funds. So the public districts retain control of the public funds, but do services and resources on behalf of the private school.
Understood.
And that works for all federal title programs. This is nothing new. So since the dawn of the ESSA Act in 1965, I think it goes back. I know the law does, but I think equitable services also goes back this far. So private nonprofit schools, in this case, for private nonprofits, not just private, but nonprofit, that other caveat, they have been able to participate in the federal program. They may not choose to, but the LEA is obligated to offer and extend the services.
Okay. Thanks, Ashley.
You're welcome. It can be a little controversial, especially in a state like ours that has tons of wonderful private schools that seemingly have a lot of fun. So sometimes it gets people a little confused and not upset, but just confused as to why the private schools get some of the funds, quote unquote. But that's not really how it works. It's more that the services are shared and the LEA foots some of the bill for them.
Actually, there was a further question to understand if the percentage that goes, is there a certain percentage that has to go to those nonprofit schools? Or,
sort of. It's a little more complicated than that. It's based on a formula that is a per pupil expenditure. So if you have a private school and they have 10 kids in your town and your school has 500 kids, there's a little calculation to figure out about how much federal funds you get per student at the public school, and then that same amount has to be shared at the private school. So it's not the allocations are, we have information that's definitely, in other words, if you've done federal funds before, this kind of information has shown up for you at a certain level at your school at some point. But it's not, it's a per pupil, not a percentage of the dollars.
okay.
If that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, when you're in front of a classroom and you can see people's faces and you know sort of what they're, you can say, kind of get a feeling for if they get it or not.
Yeah.
That I'm finding is so hard in webinars.
Okay, folks will write in their questions.
I hope they will. I hope everyone feels comfortable to ask questions. I guess that's kind of what I mean in a funny way. Please feel free, because you know, one person saying it isn't necessarily what someone else is hearing. So, you know, please let me know if I can clarify in any way.
I'm going to take this moment because a couple people have asked. This presentation is recorded and it will be uploaded to our YouTube site. So, okay.
And you'll all receive an email at the end with links to all that. And the other thing I'll mention too, as Karen mentioned earlier, you can put your hand up. So if some of you are still struggling with any of these answers, feel free to put your hand up and we can unmute you just to clarify the question.
And you've gotten some rooting on. Pamela says you're doing great, Ashley. So keep going. All right. So Ashley, are we on next slide or? Ooh. Ooh. Ashley? Oh, looks like she's offline. I'm not sure what has happened.
Ashley, are you muted? Is your phone muted? Karen, I'll try to give her a call.
Okay, you give her a call. I am going to, Joey, if you want to help, I am going to, just sort of keep your ears peeled. I'm going to sort of try to fill in a little. I think this next slide is pretty self-explanatory.
The thing is, I can't find, I'm wondering if the same thing happened to me. Can you hear me, Karen?
I can hear you.
Okay, so just now I lost the whole webinar and I'm trying to get it back. So I'm wondering if that's what happened to Ashley, and I'll help as much as I can, but
Okay.
he is the expert, but I can't even see your slide right now, so I'm trying to get it.
Okay. Catherine, you're on too. I just unmuted you.
Oh, is that Ashley back?
All right, hold on. We're going to try to get Ashley through my phone.
Okay, here we go.
Thank you.
Okay, Karen, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mike.
Ashley, you try.
Okay, how about me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I can.
Woo! Okay, so talking about private schools, I'm happy to clarify if there's anything else on that one, and please forgive my brief absence.
So I think we're set with private schools.
Okay.
And the next slide, we're talking about our title fund allocations. It's got, I don't know, you're probably not seeing them, are you?
No, it's okay, but I know what we are talking about here.
Okay.
Okay, so so essentially the way that the I'm slowly logging back in here. My computer is coming back to life, it seems. The way the allocations are, I think this is where we say what they're allowable for.
Yeah, we got Title I Part A is helping
Okay,
disadvantaged
great.
students, and it's laptop
Yes.
software.
Yep. So this slide essentially is kind of sharing not just about the flexibilities within ESSA at this time, your typical title funds, your normal ones, but also just sort of underutilized provisions of these apps. So there are a lot of supports for remote learning that can be found in your existing title grants, and a lot of space for getting devices. Title I is still for Title I kids and not for non-Title I students, if that makes sense. But for school-wide schools, that's not a problem because all schools are Title I. All kids are Title I kids. But that can be used for devices for your Title I students, extra services, and obviously Karen is going to talk a little bit more about some of the innovative ways to use these funds, but this just kind of gets you started to thinking about it. Title II can be used for devices for teachers, McKinney-Vento, all sorts of supports for our homeless students and our very needy populations. Title IV, again, programming devices for all students, and you're freed from the cap of 15% on those devices. So, that's a great way to purchase some devices for the district and for the students. I think that's a really excellent one for that. So I think that this chart does a pretty good job of describing some of the things that one could do with these funds.
One thing you didn't mention, Ashley, that I know you would have saw the slide was the salary. So no, that's okay. So I guess salary is certainly Title I and Title IV.
Yep. Yes. And Title I, obviously, for your Title I teachers, your Title I paras. Title II, if you have a class size reduction teacher or something else that you already have in your Title II grant, that is fine. Title IV, extra programming for well-rounded musical instruments, additional programming that might be after school or during school. But yes, salaries can still be paid if teachers and your support staff are still working. Absolutely, those salaries can continue to be paid, and you maybe can even think about some positions a little more flexibly now.
Thanks. Okay. So I'm just looking to see if there's any last questions. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about some ideas to spend this money in light of current events. And some of the things that we're putting out there are, some of them are spending ideas that we've taken and borrowed from some of the schools with whom we are working. And some of these ideas are things that we've thought up as a team, and others are just through conversations with different leaders and so on and so forth. I would love to hear from all of you that are on the presentation or on the call, on the webinar rather, about some of the ideas that you've had or some of the planning that you have done. The first slide is just speaking about some of the different ways that we talked about to support students and families and using that money for direct support. A couple of the schools that we're working with are going to be sending home remote learning care packages for every student imminently. You know, pencils, paper, notebooks, rulers, and etc. Another school that we're working with is they're purchasing Chromebooks for every student in the building. They're taking this opportunity to go one-to-one in terms of technology, and part of the impetus for that was that they felt like they had lent out so many Chromebooks that they were unsure of what they would get back and in what condition those Chromebooks might be. And then there's another school that we're working with that's planning to send home books and instructional games to each family. I have a write-in here, graphing calculators for students in algebra and higher classes. Pamela wrote that in. So there's another idea for direct support of materials and tools for students. The second category that we had talked about as a team at DS was, you know, bringing staff in outside of typical work hours. And I think a lot of schools right now are thinking about the summer in particular and how they can leverage the extended year to support students with whatever gaps have developed between March and the end of the year. So we were talking with some different leaders about paying staff to work over the summer. Another thing that I had actually been speaking with Bridie Bellamere, the head of the New Hampshire Principals Association, about bringing in stakeholder groups over the summer to do strategic planning for different fall scenarios. You know, who knows what's going to happen, right? If A, we go back to brick and mortar, what would that be like? If we go back to a hybrid model, we have to make a scenario plan for that. And teachers will be, and other staff members will be very important in those conversations. You know, another option is paying staff to attend PD. I think all staff has missed face-to-face PD, and you know, some of that can be made up over the summer. Essential PD that you may need to start the school year, PD around remote learning and technology tools, and any of the new demands that might arise in light of COVID-19. Something else that we were talking about was the intense social emotional needs that students may come back to school with, and maybe providing PD around helping teachers to support students when they come back to school. Another strategy we talked about was paying staff to meet with small groups or individual students who need targeted instruction over the summer, either virtually or in small groups or one-to-one in person, depending on the rules and how this virus evolves. And lastly, just the idea of paying staff to meet after school or Saturday mornings with students, or Sunday, whenever in the fall, to enhance support and provide targeted instruction for kids for whom really remote learning didn't work very well and their gaps are sizable. So I'm just going to take a moment and look at some of the comments. Christine is saying that when students return, there will be some that need additional supports. Can we use any of this money to pay for tutors or other personnel to help bring students up to date? And I think that the answer to that, and certainly Ashley and team listen carefully to my response, but I think that the answer to that is yes, that is a good expenditure with this money.
Extra support.
Say it again, Ashley?
I'm sure teachers would love to have some extra time and a little extra, you know, in their pockets, because they're probably doing a lot of that extra work anyway, if we're talking about our last section there.
Yep. Another comment here from Susan, if a school is not school-wide Title I, can they purchase Chromebooks to give out to students right now? It's not Title I.
Did you hear that, Ashley?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you say it one more time?
Yeah, if a school is not school-wide, if they're not school-wide Title I, can they purchase Chromebooks to give out to Title I students right now?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, thanks. So some more ideas, and I think some of them were just written in as well. Bringing staff in over the summer at grade level PLCs to look at any student data that was collected this spring and to talk about what that data means for instruction going forward. And then in addition, what did they omit? What was left out of the spring teaching as teachers were forced to prioritize their instruction and maybe, thin out the competencies that they needed to direct their instruction at. So bringing in teachers to meet as PLCs to talk about reimagining the plan for entry in terms of the plan for instruction based on that. Paying staff to meet in vertical PLCs, right? So if you have second grade and third grade, and second grade was unable to teach the last 2 units of math, let's say geometry and measurement, bringing them together with the third grade to have conversations about if students are going to enter third grade next year, right? What does that transition look like? What does the third grade need to include in their instruction just in order to bring those students up to a place where they're ready to learn third grade material? Paying staff and therapeutic consultants to help support students process the pandemic. Kids are going to be coming back in the fall, and potentially there's considerable trauma, some misunderstanding, anxiety about being out in social spaces again. And certainly staff might need some additional professional development and consultation, not to mention the trauma that staff has been through in the last 2 or 3 months. And then lastly, bringing staff in to participate in these stakeholder groups to reflect on what worked and what did not work in this virtual learning time, so that the pieces that did work, we can move forward with those pieces and integrate that into our brick and mortar instruction or whatever new format of instruction we have coming back. So it's important to process this time and really take the pieces that worked and apply them forward, and obviously don't repeat the pieces that didn't work if we have a choice. I'm just looking at a comment from Christine. Whenever students return, oh, nope, I think that's an older one.
It is, Karen, but now that I think Ashley's back on the phone, I just want to make sure Ashley heard that question correctly. So the question was, can we use dollars to pay for tutors or other personnel to help bring students up to date? This would be when students return, I guess, either summer or fall.
Oh yeah, yep, absolutely, tutors. Now I would of course bear in mind, I would bear in mind that you are going to need to think about what your students need and prioritize them, as you would, of course, for anyone. So, hiring a tutor for your kids that have, oh gosh, the ones that haven't even, I hate to even say this, but haven't checked in, haven't engaged. You definitely want to think about those kids first. That's just some, idea that I have. I also wanted to say just quickly too, work with your grant writers too, because all these things are definitely allowable. We just want to make sure they live in the right spot, and that's what we're here to help you with. So, if you are a grant manager yourself, make sure to leverage us as a team here at the DOE, or really, we're not at the DOE right now. We're sort of all over the state, but we're in close contact with one another. So, reach out to us and make sure we can get your activity plugged into the right place. But I love some of these ideas.
Ashley, I have a question, and it might be a naive question, but I'm going to ask it. If you're hiring someone from outside to work with a student, what kind of credentials does that person have to have?
So it really depends. If you're hiring them with Title I funds, you're really going to want to look at your to make sure that they are certified. You're going to want to look really heavily at the New Hampshire certification standards for a variety of things. This new version of these title programs under ESSA, the authority is really back on states and the state definition of what is allowable. So if you're going to be paying for them with those Title I funds, they have to be certified. That's really important. And so
They can't be students, ed students.
Oh, education students.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, there definitely could be some ways to do that. Yes. Okay. I don't think they could work directly with your Title I students and be paid with Title I funds, but there are definitely ways to pay some education program students with some of our other funds. There are ways to do that, and in fact, that's something the commissioner really likes. I would kind of veer away from Title I dollars for that kind of thing.
Okay.
Just because you want to make sure. The theory behind that is you want the highest quality person working with the neediest students. That doesn't always make sense, right? Like we know some really great ed programs where the people are not yet certified and they'd be magic for a certain student, but we still have to follow some of those rules if the payment follows them that same way.
Kim just wrote in a question and it piggybacked somewhat. I was wondering, you and I were just talking about Title I funds for paying tutors and certified teachers. And Kim wrote in, Are we confusing Title I funds with CARE Act funds? So go. Yep.
The CARES Act funds, and I know this is very confusing, are not Title I dollars. So the same rules for Title I do not apply to those funds. And those have a lot of wiggle room, as it were. So the CARES funds don't follow the same rules as the Title I funds. So I would just be careful if you're specifically using Title I funds to hire tutors. You have to make sure they are certified for what you're having them tutor. It has to be commensurate with what they're doing. So make sure that makes sense. But CARES dollars, there's a lot more room with that.
Okay.
So Karen, actually,
go, Mike.
I would also just say, anytime you are hiring someone to work with one of your kids, you want to make sure that you go. Any school would do this. You don't just hire any person from off the street. You know what I mean? There are vetting. So I'm not trying to make this sound like it's a snobby contest or anything like that. But you just want to make sure you do all the stuff you have to do for state requirements, background check, all that stuff.
Yes.
Ashley, just to confirm what I'm hearing you say, though, so the conversations about, students using students as teachers, students from ed programs, or getting laptops that you right now for Title I students in the targeted young school, that's all title answers. For CARES Act, you, for example, could get Chromebooks for any student.
Oh my gosh, that's right. And with Title IV, you can get Chromebooks for any kid. Right. But Title I, and the only reason I mention this is because I think most districts get the most funds in Title I. And so I think it's important to always kind of put that out there. It has the most restrictions on it. And usually it's the most money, typically. But yes, Title IV can get you laptops for any kid, regardless of their Title I status. Title II can get laptops for teachers. The CARES Act funds you can pay yourself back for laptops that you bought back on March 17th. So the CARES Act is different from these funds, but it can behave as any of them essentially.
Okay. I'm just looking at some questions. So it's my understand there's a piggyback on the Title I question about the Chromebooks. Can you purchase Chromebooks to replace the Chromebooks that you have already given out to Title I students?
I mean, I would, yes, but I would get, just say you're buying new laptops, keep it simple. Keep it simple. You are buying laptops. That's what I would say. Now, be careful that you're following the right, disposal and care of those. I don't want anyone to get in trouble. In other words, don't just give them the bad iPads or whatever you're replacing to the non-Title I students. They're still federally funded things. Just tell us you're getting new laptops. That'll keep it more simple. Don't get too in the weeds with it. Does that make sense? In other words, sometimes people tell us more stuff than we want to know. I would stick to your need. If you need laptops, say that you need some laptops.
Okay.
If we ask a follow-up question, are they for your Title I students and you're purchasing with Title I dollars, you better be able to say yes. If there was Title IV dollars and we say, are they for students, and you say yes, that's great. We don't need to get into your deep rationale for why you may or may not need them.
Okay. Gregory's asking about Title I Part D.
Yeah.
Does any of this impact Title I Part D?
That's a great question. Title I D is kind of its own its own thing. So yes, the waiver and the period of availability, Greg, that period of availability for Title I D subpart 2, yes, it's extended for your 2018 funds until 2021, just like the other ones.
Okay, great. Just a few more questions. Yeah.
I think, Ashley, I still think there's some confusion again with CARE, because I think some of the answers you're giving are focused on the title funds versus CARE funds. So again, like if you've got broken laptops, you can replace as many laptops as you want with CARE funds. It's not an issue.
Yes, you can. You can. Here's why I get nervous when people say we have broken laptops replaced. The CARES Act is here because of a crisis. It is not because of normal wear and tear. That being said, we're not going to ask you about the CARES Act funds. Please don't overshare information with us. You know what I mean? Like, so if you say, oh, last time we bought computers was 2010. Well, clearly you're not, and they've all broken down and things like that. We don't need to know the whole history of your purchases. I'm probably making this more confusing than it is, but what I mean to say is don't tell us too much information. Just say you need the laptop. It's based on need around COVID. Does that help?
I think that helps. And the specific question was the fact that because of COVID-19 right now, there's so much more use of the laptops that there's going to be more.
That's fine. And that's perfect. But again, we don't necessarily need to know that they're broken. I mean, it's not going to be an issue. We just don't need to know that. We sometimes get people that put teachers' names in grants. Again, it's stuff we don't need to know. Just
okay.
Stick to the facts, in other words.
Got it. Natasha just wants to confirm that her 18-19 Title I funds that carried over into her 19-20 grant will be part of the extension till 9/2021.
Yeah. Okay, that's a great question. And if I had a visual to share with you, Natasha, I would. But here's the deal. You don't have any 18-19 funds really yet in Title I. That grant has closed. The 19-20 is what you have currently. July 1st, you will get another Title I grant. Your 19-20 will end, and all your funds will carry over into the new allocation. So there's going to be a small period of time where you can spend down your 1920, spend down, and you can clean up until, I think, August 31st, I think. In which, and at the end of that cleanup period, you're going to have to put the same activity. Let's say you're continuing the activity, a summertime activity, let's say. You're going to want to put that into your 2021 grant. So, in other words, your Title I grant is not going to behave, and I'm saying this to you specifically, Natasha, because I know you know what I'm talking about. Title II, you have 2 active grants, sometimes 3. Title I, you have 1 active grant, and sometimes for a teeny amount of time, 2, while you're closing 1 out. That same thing will be happening, but all the money is going to get dumped into your new grant if it's unspent. So in other words, its life is still until 2021, but it's going to only be living in 1 grant at a time.
So Ashley, just to repeat what you said, so what I heard you say is that the 1819 funds, they became 1920 funds at some point. So now they're all considered 1920 funds.
Okay, well, let's put it in 2 separate boxes if I can, Mike. I'm so sorry. Title I has its own rules. So let's forget Title I for a second. Just for 1 second. 1819 right now only exists in the grants management system for certain grants. Everything but Title I. If that makes sense. That money is the oldest money. So the idea is that you spend down your old money first. Any 1819 funds from Title I, going back to our other side of the coin here, to Title I, were already up to 15% dumped into the 1920 Title I grant, but only 15%. This year, right now, your 1920 Title I funds, which have a teeny bit of your 1819 funds still in them, are all going to get dumped into your 1920 grants, effectively, doubling their lifespan. You have longer to spend those funds, but where you spend them from, technically in the grants management system, is going to be 2 different places. You'll have to, if you want to continue one activity through the summer and into the fall, you're going to have to duplicate the writing of that activity into the next year's grant. You will not have to do that same thing for Title II or Title IV or those other grants. Does that make sense? I hope I can get some feedback on that one. We are hopefully going to have a visual out today because, let's just put it this way, the law only says, it doesn't tell a state how to do it. So we've figured out how to do it now. So we want to make sure we can communicate that to you, but it's only become clear to us recently. Ruthie, please. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that does, Ashley, because the original question was about the Title I fund. So I think that
yeah, that's because the Title I funds are usually, again, the most amount of money, and they're the least flexible. So it's almost like, imagine yourself in 2 different worlds. In Title I, your 1920 grants are going to live longer, and in Title II, Title IV, all those other ones, your 1819 grants are going to live longer. It's effectively all the same amount of time. It's just that they're going to be living in different homes in the grants management system, or under like different titles. But you're going to have a lot of time for all of them until 2021, effectively. I know that this is one format for it, and we didn't really have time to get this as a visual in the slides because we are doing this work as, we're telling you this work as we are doing it, with our dogs barking and everything, and our kids in our, on their laptops in the same room, all that kind of stuff. So I'm so sorry if that isn't clear, and I am happy to follow up in email with an image. I'll do an interpretive dance. I know it's confusing. We have all been a little confused about it.
Okay. It looks like that that the clarification,
Was somewhat satisfactory.
Yeah, that was good.
Okay.
I think we're good. Mike?
Okay. We will get out more, so don't worry. This is not your last chance to understand it.
I mean,
Thank
some
you.
simple, I think, Ashley, some simple questions. So Title I carryover is not limited to 15%. And the answer is,
That's right. That's exactly what the law says. Yes, that's it. Which means we're going to give you all of it. We, like, whatever that means, the state. Yeah.
I don't know if you want to get into this, Ashley, but the question about timing. So I guess when the grants aren't officially closed out until around December when they close their grants, I'm not sure how that fits into this.
Well, for Title I, it's a little bit different.
For Title I, just talking about Title I.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay. Let me just. Okay. Hold on. Because I actually do have this here. We did write this out for ourselves, at least mostly here. So I could probably read it nicely off of something for you. It's just that it's a little hard to explain verbally. It would be easier to show you something. But like I said, this is so hot off the presses that we really don't have it beautifully written out. Okay. So here's kind of where it's going to be. So Title II, 3, 4 will have an extra year added to their performance period automatically for you in the grants management system. Okay. We'll have that. Anything there is gonna just automatically get an extension on it. But Title I is going to be a little bit different because we're not allowed to extend the performance period on it. We're only allowed to give you unlimited carryover. So the 1920 Title I grants, there's no limit when they dump into the 2021. They haven't really changed the performance period there. It's just that you'll have all of your carryover, so you won't lose any funds from one year to the next. So, and I'll tell you when that sort of happens generally in the year, if this isn't too deep in the weeds. They file, so LEAs file a final report on their 1920 grant. They end, right, let's say I think it's August 31st. I think I have some other Title I folks on the call, if I'm wrong.
That's it.
Okay, and you have 45 days to do all your reporting for that, okay, for your final report. When you're done with your final report, whatever's left over, it's going to dump into your 2021 grant. So if you were continuing services past August 31st, but you still have money, right? And now it's dumped into your 2021 grant. You just have to copy and paste the activity and write it again. Copy and paste it into the next grant year's activity. But effectively, there could theoretically not be an interruption in service. Good. You should see me squinching up my face and hoping that.
I think that's good, Ashley. Why don't we
move
on?
Okay.
And
again, it's really hard to say. Yeah, it'll be really nice for everyone when we have a kind of a written format for everybody. So don't inundate me with emails. We will, I mean, you can, that's fine, but we will try to get it out to you here, like a written description of what it is, especially for those of you who are business administrators, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Thank you so much. You've worked so hard trying to clarify it. It's so appreciated.
Oh, no, that's no problem. I don't mind explaining it at all. I just know the limitations of, of just a voice on the line. So I realize my limitations here.
And Ashley, if we can also, I know that you'll be sending it out, and then we can also put into the folder that holds all of the information around this webinar. We can also put any written material in there as well.
Perfect. Yes, thank you so much. And I know you've been already doing that, and I just really, really appreciate it. We'll also probably, again, that New Hampshire Learns Remotely website that you put up there in the front, Karen and Mike and everyone and Sarah, that we will also. I get booted off again. Am I still here?
Yeah, no, you're here.
Oh,
you're going to put it at the end of that sentence, what?
So that New Hampshire Learns Remotely, we are trying to get a lot of the stuff that we put out generally about the CARES Act and about our flexibility waivers, and this is part of that flexibility waiver. We try to get that out and put on that website as well. So you can always hopefully find it in a couple different places. Also, nag your superintendents because we usually send it out to them first.
Okay.
unless you are the superintendent, in which case, great, share it with all of your folks once you process it yourself.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So I think that that everyone sort of gets the ideas around who they can hire and bring in to support students. You know, we obviously, as Ashley actually talked about earlier in the presentation, some of the things that we might need in direct response to COVID around facilities and functioning, masks, gloves, cleaning, and all that. So that was it on the funding ideas. Does anyone want to add anything about anything that they're planning on doing, that they have ideas that they've planned for already to spend their money? Certainly write that in, and I'm happy to share it with the group, or raise your hand if you want to be unmuted and have that conversation. Then that would be great. Okay.
Also, Joey and Catherine, if you have anything you want to add.
Please.
I think these are great lists and certainly a place to start out with.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad. And if you want to add anything going forward, send it my way, and I'm happy to. We are happy to proliferate any good ideas. So before we end, I think I just want to tell you a little bit about what's going to be going on going forward. We have a couple of webinars that are happening this week. On Wednesday, we will continue our Google Suite adventures with the nuts and bolts of Google Docs on May 6th at 3 o'clock. And on the 7th, we're going to be having a Principal Community Conversations webinar for grades K through 8 for school leaders. And we're going to talk about responsive planning to meet student needs post-COVID-19. So we would love for any and all of you to attend and join in that conversation. Just to update you, there's on our website, we have a list of all of our past webinars and links to where you can watch them on our YouTube channel. So everything that we've done in the past 6 weeks is all on our YouTube channel. And in addition, there's folders that we have, public folders, where there are materials from those webinars, certificates, and so on, and the PowerPoints as well. So here's just an image of our YouTube demonstrated success channel. And this will be there as well, the recording from this webinar. And then just like Mike said earlier, in a couple of hours, within a couple of hours, you're gonna get an email that sends you a link to YouTube, a link to our public file that has information, the PowerPoint itself, and a certificate of attendance. And then I will upload anything else that Ashley and the team send to me. I will put into that folder for access. So you'll be getting that in the next couple of hours. On Wednesday at 5 o'clock, we have a violinist from Wyndham High School who will be performing on our live Facebook site at 5 o'clock on the 6th. And we've been doing this weekly for about, 4 weeks, and it's been utterly lovely to the communal feeling, and just giving these kids an opportunity to perform publicly. Some of them, Mike, did you say that some of them were missing?
Most of them have been part of the All-State program, and they all, they missed their All-States this year because it was canceled, obviously. So it's been nice to give them another venue to perform for people. These are kids that, as you all know, they work so hard day after day performing their art. So it's been fun. It's been wonderful to hear them, and great to let them have a venue to share.
So that's this Wednesday on our Facebook page. And just lastly, feel free to get in touch with us. Ashley's email is down at the bottom. Me and Mike and Sarah and Ann, we're all here for you if you want to get in touch and you have any questions or follow up. Mike, did you want to say anything before we sign off?
No, I mean, there's the group on this call is different, I think, in composure than a lot of other trainings that we've had, which are much more teacher, paraprofessional focused. So just for those of you here on this call, I mean, I know you all know how hard your teachers are working, but from our perspective, having been able to do these webinars, we've had, I think, over 20,000 views of these webinars from teachers in New Hampshire. And I just say that because it's one more metric of how hard people are working out there to try to figure out how to navigate the virtual world. And it's been amazing to watch. And just cheers to, please pass on the cheers, which I hope you're doing to all your teachers out there.
Thank you, Mike. I concur, ditto.
And
So,
Ashley, thank you so much for Ashley, Joey,
Catherine.
Catherine.
Thank you. Oh, thanks for having us anytime. I know we are working through, as you can hear, like such a complicated time, complicated things in a complicated time. And I feel very grateful just to be in this state where we can actually connect with one another. And I'm honored to be of service as I may. So I know that everyone's working so hard for kids. So anything we can do on our end, I think I speak for the whole team up in our title office, that we are really grateful for the work that you're doing and honored to help you in any way we can.
Thank you, Ashley. Okay, everyone. Thanks for taking the time out of your day for today's webinar. Stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thanks.
education.
Bye now.
Of course. All right. Take care, all.
Bye.
Bye.